Aloha nerds, and welcome back to another episode of the Salawag's Why It's Great Gut Reaction. I'm your host, the Salawag, and on this show I talk about movies that I've just recently watched, that I've done no homework for, and tell you why I liked them. So, I just watched 3 Days of the Condor, which stars Robert Redford and Faye Dunaway, and Cliff Robertson, who, if you enjoyed the Spider-Man trilogy, he played Uncle Ben. So basically the premise of 3 Days of the Condor is that Robert Redford, a young reader for the CIA, he works for a special organization within the CIA that just reads books, everything that's published in the world, just to cross-reference anything fictional that may have connected with a CIA mission or CIA orders. And essentially the movie starts off with him going to lunch to go get food for his team, and while he's out grabbing lunch for everybody, the team is assassinated. And Robert Redford goes on the run because he's essentially the last man alive. And this turns out he tries to meet with his CIA head officials, but then assassins try to kill him, and he keeps trying to get to the CIA. He keeps trying to get to someone he can trust, but there's no one he can trust. And he just goes deeper and deeper into learning how much corruption is going on within this organization that he's supposed to trust. And, you know, it's a really interesting movie. I came upon it actually not because I'm a true film buff. I'm just sort of a film buff. I just love filmmaking. I love how movies are made. And so, you know, about a month ago I finally picked up Captain America Winter Soldier, and on the commentary for Captain America Winter Soldier, the Russo brothers who directed it were talking about their influences for, you know, what movies did they watch to prepare themselves for Winter Soldier. Because obviously they didn't just pick up the comic book and just directly translate the comic book. Only Zack Snyder does that with Watchmen, and that's about it. That's all we're going to get for direct adaptations. Sorry. But one of the influences for Winter Soldier, the film, was 3 Days of the Condor. The other ones were Manchurian Candidate, and I forget the other one. But 3 Days of the Condor happened to be available on Amazon Prime, which I have a subscription to. And so I watched it. I'm like, okay, what is the connection here between these movies? And basically, you know, aside from the comic book elements that must have been there, you can see the plot structure is very similar between the two movies. Both Winter Soldier and 3 Days of the Condor start off with a very endearing, short, brief introduction into the main character and his relationships. In the case of 3 Days of the Condor, we see how friendly Robert Redford is with his co-workers. They all really get along. Everything goes very well with all of them. He may have sort of a relationship with one of his female co-workers, and it's kind of a sweet, unspoken thing. And you get the tragedy of him coming back from lunch and seeing them all wiped out. Now in the case of Winter Soldier, we're starting off with Captain America starting a new relationship where he, you know, he's just exercising, going for a jog, and he happens to have the same jogging route as another guy, and because Captain America doesn't get tired, he keeps passing that guy up on this same exact route and saying, on your left, on your left. And so it's a semi-jerk, sort of just having fun with someone else you're exercising with type of thing. But it starts off their friendship, and we get introduced to Natasha, who is the Black Widow, who picks him up, and you're sort of slowly, character by character, introduced to Captain America's world, everyone he's friends with, everyone he respects. And plot-wise, these movies have a lot of things in common. And what's interesting is one of the famous, iconic scenes of Captain America Winter Soldier is the elevator sequence, where Cap enters an elevator full of enemies. Now, this scene is flipped in 3 Days of the Condor. In 3 Days of the Condor, Robert Redford, who is the main character, irony, Robert Redford, same actor, is the villain in Captain America Winter Soldier. So this is not a coincidence, not a coincidence at all. But in 3 Days of the Condor, there's also an elevator scene where Robert Redford has been running to any friend that he has and telling them to get out of town, to get away from him, to not try to contact him at all, and stay away from people that may know him. And after talking to one of these people, he gets into an elevator with an assassin, and the assassin looks at him, and he looks back at him, and they're in a crowded elevator. And although there's no close-ups of sweat or anything, which is kind of a, it was done before Winter Soldier did it. Other movies have done scenes like this, but essentially this is the same type of situation where two people know that they're enemies and they're trapped in a confined space. And how they get out of that situation is very interesting. I don't want to spoil it if you're interested in 3 Days of a Condor, because it's cool. It's not a fight scene, but it's a true film spy movie. It happens much how in real life, how you never expect things to happen. They happen their own way. That's kind of what's nice about how this elevator scene ends. You know, Winter Soldier has a spectacular fight. It's very visual. It's very fun. 3 Days of a Condor has something that feels real, that feels like, okay, this is how a guy would survive this in a realistic situation. So it's cool. It's very cool. I really love seeing those parallels, and what's really fun is Cliff Robertson actually plays the head of the CIA. Very much, and Cliff Robertson, who, if you love the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, obviously, if you're a real film buff, you know Cliff Robertson has a much bigger filmography than that. But if you're a fan of the original Sam Raimi, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man trilogy, Cliff Robertson played Uncle Ben. And I think that's that same audio clip, with great power comes great responsibility, that's in the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse movie. But Cliff Robertson here, a much younger man, because this movie is shot in the 70s, Cliff Robertson, you know, you get a sense very similar to Robert Redford's villain character in Winter Soldier. Cliff Robertson's villain character in 3 Days of a Condor, he's clearly after Robert Redford's character off the bat. And you can kind of sense that he is covering something up, or that there's something going on in everything that he says. In his very first scene, they're trying to establish why Robert Redford didn't just come straight to the CIA, and it's after one of the assassination attempts that I talked about earlier. And Cliff Robertson has already sort of drummed up a little story, or at least left breadcrumbs for his cohort people, his fellow CIA directors, left breadcrumbs for them to feel suspicious of Robert Redford, as opposed to just trying to figure out what happened. And to me, I think I notice this both with people and in movies, general film language. Whoever has the story before the story's out is the one creating the story and generating a story for you. Whereas the people who are all asking the questions genuinely don't know what's going on. And that's sort of what's happening in this scene. You see Robert Redford, you see Cliff Robertson set up a narrative for his CIA officials to say, you know, because he just asks a question. He just says, you know, it's pretty suspicious that he didn't just come in. Even though an attempt was made for Robert Redford to come into the CIA, and it was thwarted, not conveniently for Robert Redford, but conveniently for this scene for Cliff Robertson to say this. So there's so much, you know, to be read in between the lines just by these little looks that Cliff Robertson gives, that he has this suspicion about him, the way he's performing, the way the camera shoots him. And that same treatment goes to Robert Redford in Winter Soldier, when we're introduced to a guy who... the difference, though, is that when we're introduced to Cliff Robertson, it's in the thick of the story. It's after the events have already happened. So while in Winter Soldier some events have happened that seem suspicious to Captain America, there is a sufficient amount of time given to Robert Redford's character in the beginning of Winter Soldier where he is really set up to be a very good guy who seems like he could have been a Captain America type when he was younger, someone who really had convictions. They really do try and set you up on Winter Soldier, whereas in 3 Days of a Condor, you kind of just get straight into it, and there's an immediate sense of threat from Cliff Robertson's character. And it's really engaging how the movie actually toes that line back and forth between being suspicious of Cliff Robertson and sort of feeling like maybe actually Cliff Robertson is a good guy who is just trying to figure this out. And you know, it's just a fantastic way that they dole this all out. It's an old school movie. People are doing their own stunts. There's no CG doubles. There's no body doubles, or well, there's probably some body doubles. But yeah, 3 Days of Condor, what a fantastic movie. Go check it out. If you've enjoyed this review at all, thank you, right on. And if you didn't, rightfully so, go watch something better. youtube.com/kindafunny, youtube.com/comicbookgirl19. Frickin' Red Letter Media, I don't care. Watch some Black Nerd, frickin' who else is out there? I don't know. I don't watch that much YouTube. Frickin' Neil deGrasse Tyson has a podcast. That's really cool. I just started listening to that. Yeah, if you don't want to watch this, watch that. You'll probably get smarter from that. Oh, Kevin Smith, that guy's awesome. Yeah, you should watch his YouTube channel. He has tons of stuff. Yeah. That's right. That's right. Don't subscribe. You don't want more of this.